So, Mr. Jensen, did we ever decide on the title for is it Hustle and Muscle or what did we decide?
Sales hustle and ops muscle, I think.
Okay. So, Sean, it's Friday afternoon and welcome to our first podcast.
And I'm telling you what, it's been something we've been thinking about doing for a while. I'm kind of excited to be here, Mr. Mead.
Well, Lord knows as a sales guy you talk enough, so there's no reason that we shouldn't be able to fill out hours of conversation. And I know I like to tell stories, so I think between the two of us, we could probably spend way too much time doing a podcast.
There's no question about it. No question about it. Although, luckily, I think you bring a little bit of the comedic element that I like to laugh at so much.
Bump, isn't that what's the rim shot there for a moment?
No doubt, no doubt.
I don't
So,
know. You've got a few jokes in you too. I know that you have no problem throwing a zinger here or there.
well, listen, you're an easy target, so.
Oh, ow! Wow. Yeah. Well, actually, in fairness, between the hair and a few other things, I have no doubt that I've got an easy target on me. So,
No. You know what?
but
As I thought about this podcast, though, in all sincerity, I love the idea of you and I kind of coming together. So many people that we work with, I don't think ever really get a chance to know just how much you've done and accomplished in your
yeah.
career, and it just is me being able to sit there and work with you on a daily basis and hear about some of those experiences. It was like, this is going to be a really cool forum, right? Just to kind
Yeah.
of dive into that a little bit.
Well, and I think the other piece is, and I think this is why we make such a good duo for a podcast is there's always this perception, right, that sales and operations are at each other's throats because, it sells, oh, can you build a flux capacitor? Oh, sure, we'll sell you that. And then, hey, Chad, can you figure out how to do that? There's always kind of this dynamic view of, sales doesn't pay attention and ops always has to fix things or whatever. And the reality is, I think, further from the truth. Now, are they out there? You and I both know. I mean, I've had salespeople that sell stuff that's not even possible. And I'm sure we've had ops people who said they can't do whatever you want, even though it is possible. But
Yeah.
you and I think, have a dynamic, especially here at Acuative, that says, hey, look, we're going to work to do what's right for the customer. And sometimes that's doing something out of the norm. The flip side is sometimes it's delivering and not delivering something that the customer wants because it actually would be worse for the customer in some cases.
Yep. No, it's funny that you mentioned that specifically because I feel like last week in Cleveland, you and I and one of your directors, we sat in an office where you came forward and basically said that this type of engagement with a customer is not benefiting them, it's not benefiting us. And here was your perspective, right? And it wasn't about, the sales leader just saying, "Oh, I want to win at all costs." I mean, the outcome of that conversation was, I'm going to back your play because you're
Right.
absolutely right. And I think you've put an emphasis, which I really like here, by the way, you put an emphasis on kind of not just collaboration across the departments, but you lean in to these engagements. You lean in to when we're doing a qualification review on something, right? Is this the right place for us to play? And
Right.
it's not just a revenue discussion. It's
Mm-mm.
not just a margin. I mean, could we make that money? Yes, but should we? And in a modern day COO or a CRO kind of pairing, right? That should we is probably 10 times more important than can we. That makes sense?
No, I think you're absolutely right. It's interesting. I used to do I used to do a speech at trade shows about the evolution of the CIO, moving from kind of the Neanderthal up to the more modern day CIO and how they've changed, et cetera. And I think there's a similar evolution with the COO. I remember, when I was first getting into business and probably is not dissimilar to you, where the COO was so operationally focused. It was all about cost per unit, efficiency, delivery. It was so heads down and was less about the business side of things. and more about that tactical side that they weren't really necessarily seeing strategically. And I look at, other COOs now, myself included, who've had a more broad-based background, who didn't just come up from the manufacturing or the supply chain or whatever, and try to look at a much broader purview of things and what's the right thing, not just for the company, but what's the right thing for the client. And sometimes the right thing for the client is being fired. And that's not something that would have historically been looked at positively. And I think, I know one of our future podcasts, we want to have a friend of yours on who has talked about quite extensively, actually, about the modern day COO and how that role's changed. And I think this is just our roles together in terms of sales, revenue, and operations are emblematic of that evolution of both of the roles. Because I think even the chief sales, chief revenue person has actually changed over the years.
No doubt, no doubt about it. And, for all the listeners, Chad's referring to an industry titan. His name is Rick Sullivan. And it's funny because, Chad, I think you exemplify so many of those qualities that Rick talks about. As a thought leader, he has operationally been a partner of mine before I came to Acuative for almost 10 years as a global systems integrator. And, he had easily 20,000 people inside of his organization, handling everything from operations to products. He was a chief product officer as much as he was a COO. And it was interesting because that dynamic I see so much here between you and I. And, just to give you an example, just for those that are listening, I'd love to have Rick onto a podcast to dive into some of his thoughts. But one of the big things that he talks about is prioritizing customer satisfaction
Mm.
and with an emphasis on kind of data-driven decision making. He'll lean into things like our key account operating model,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where we want to take our account executives and our client success managers and partner them almost like a CRO and a COO in your biggest account, right? Giving them P&L responsibility, creating a composition that kind of gives quicker decision
Right.
making in the field at the customer face, right? And drives that kind of visibility and success tracking inside of an account. And that's just a microcosm of what you and I try to do at the
Yeah.
enterprise level for the business. And when he really digs into it, right? He talks about how, and this is a model that I've tried to adopt, like as a chief sales officer in a company or a chief revenue officer, my job is to create a seamless revenue engine, right? I need to take sales, marketing, customer success, and find these ways to really drive dollars and margin from new work at existing customers and drive new logos. Well, how do you do that, right? You've got digital channels that have to come in. You've got to drive, a lot of automation and AI
Mm-hmm.
in terms of going after the market, but you have to go after the right opportunities. And your COO, that modern day COO, is sitting there side by side with you
Yeah.
on those strategies, right? Like he's the one or she's the one who is challenging you to be better, to think outside the box so that that market expansion that we all kind of dream of is really geared towards you on the operation side being able to not just deliver it, but deliver it with that level of satisfaction that the customer gets sticky, right? That we build something and we can keep going. And that's something I think Rick has always imparted on me that I see so much in you. I love it. I mean, I just absolutely love it.
Well, you're going to make me blush if you keep that up. But, it's interesting because one of the things I think is in the core DNA of us at Acuitive is something that I've always tried to carry through in my role, wherever I was, in whatever role that was, which is actually stealing from the Hippocratic Oath, which is first do no harm.
Right.
And, we have to do that both for our company and for our customers. And that's where sometimes, it's, there are, we'll just say there are large offshore companies, there are large outsourcing companies that, they don't look at it that way. It's that's not in my contract. I'm not going to do that for you. And for me, it's from the moment you and I agree to onboard a customer, once that contract or statement of work is signed, it should go in the file. It
Hmm.
should never come out again,
That's right.
because there are going to be times where we're going to do work gratis because it's just the right thing to do, because it may not have been spelled out explicitly in the contract, but we know that it's aligned to what we're doing. And there are times we're going to stop a customer from doing things. And I know there's a lot of companies, and when I was on the other side of the table, there were times that it was hard for customers to tell me, no, that's the wrong thing. I want to go do this, or I want to go, we want to paint the data center, whatever, right? But they wouldn't say anything because they were afraid to say no.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we do well here, is serve as truly, partner is an oft overused statement, right? I always tell people there's a difference. There's a vendor and there's a partner. The vendor is the one who's going to give you whatever you ask for. The partner is the one who's going to hold the mirror up to your face and say, that's not a good idea. And just like family or good friends or whatever, you have to be willing to hear it,
Yeah.
but you also have to be willing to say it at times. And those make why we have some of our customers that we have for 20 plus years, because they know we're going to tell them the right thing and when they're doing the wrong thing.
That kind of gets, when I think about the prerequisites for a modern day COO, CRO kind of relationship,
Yeah.
I think you just hit the nail on the head, right? Is that cross-functional side of that team, that collaborative decision making that they make is ultimately driving what I'll call what I think is the most important is they have shared goals and
Mhm.
metrics that they're trying to hit, whether that's customer experience, NPR scores, project delivery rates, all of those things. As long as you and I share those metrics, they
Yep.
become a common goal, right? So our achievement on that allows us to report on it, allows us to kind of have that visibility, and it really kind of forces a whole new level of communication. It's a lot clearer, and I think really, it's almost like we're using a sniper
Oh
rifle
yeah.
versus a shotgun, right?
Yep.
We know exactly what we're going after versus just trying to go after everything.
And I think that's, you just said it right, because a lot of organizations I've been involved in, there are times where sales cast such a broad net that they're literally bringing anything to the table,
Yeah.
right? It's like, oh my gosh, are you guys even thinking about this before you're bringing it in? And part of what you've brought to the table and our partnership is exactly that laser focus on, these are the right deals. Bringing something just to bring something sometimes ends up with, it costs us more to support than the value that they're bringing to the table. But because you and I work together all the way up through to signing the deal, we end up having these really good decisions of the value of what's being brought in. And I agree with you. That is part of the more modern day version of it. It's not just money for money's sake. It's not just revenue for revenue's sake. It's revenue that aligns with what we're doing and the value that we're trying to bring to our customers and that the customer needs.
It'd probably be helpful, Chad, if I, just for the listeners, especially any folks that are inside of Acuative, they've seen in the newsletter lots of different changes we've been making to the
Yeah.
operating model, some of the governance model. It might be helpful if I take 60 seconds just to kind of set the stage so people understand when we talk about collaborative decision making. Chad and I have rolled out a brand new key account operating model inside of Acuative that affects all of our customers, both from a sales and a operational standpoint. There's new teams that are on the ground at the customer face, but more importantly, inside of Acuitive, as these sales come forward, we've actually created what we call a pursuit launch qualification review board, where sales, operations, and finance are all at the table kind of similar to, I almost make it like the Shark Tank in a lot of ways, where our
Mm.
teams have to come forward with their piece of business they want to go after. And in effect, they're seeking marketing dollars and my investment dollars on the sales side because they may have to go and spend
Yeah.
multiple visits to a customer, dinners, lunches, marketing campaigns. All of those things cost money and gives us a chance to say, hey, here's a qualified opportunity. What is it that makes it qualified? Who are you dealing with? Is this the right type of opportunity for us? And Chad has been fantastic in those Shark Tank sessions because not only is it about the revenue and what we could do for the customer, Chad's asking the right questions. Is this an industry that we want to go after? Is this particular customer one that we can leverage off of and earn credibility and references in the future? And as that deal progresses, just so everybody knows, it goes through a sales cycle. He and finance and I are all at the table to be able to look at how this gets solution now. We're all aware at the outset, we're choosing as a company to go after this deal. We're choosing to solution it a certain way. And it gives us all an opportunity to maybe get that deal more creative. Maybe somebody has an idea to drive AI or automation, or maybe we want to do full stack observability with this particular customer. Well, what partner do we want to necessarily partner with? Because there's all of those things that come into play. And as that solution gets driven, we all then have an opportunity to govern and see during a deal review. And ultimately, after it's signed, finance has an opportunity to really do a post-signature review and
Hmm.
audit that all of the things that we've been saying from the beginning are in fact indeed what are involved in this
Yeah.
contract. And it just has been, a way I want everybody at Acuative and those listening, it was a tool that we have found. It's a lightweight governance process. Nothing's too painful. We get together a couple times a week, and it gives us a chance to connect. And that connection, I think, says more about that process than just having a check mark in a box.
Great.
It gives us a chance to make sure we're steering the business in the right way.
I couldn't agree more. The one of the fallacies I think in the past that I've seen where that relationship fails is when not everybody's on the same page. And
Yeah.
I think by having this process, we don't end up getting something tossed over the wall, right? Hey, I signed this yesterday. Here, can you go deliver it?
I think you
We all
mentioned
know.
that to me on like my first day here, by the way. You were like,
I
if
might
you
have
can solve
mentioned that.
this, I think we got an
Yeah,
issue.
just once. But I do want to take a momentary sidetrack because we've talked about this is our first podcast.
Yeah,
Um, it's not all about Acuitive. This isn't a big sales pitch, right? What you and I are trying to do here is really take both our relationship, what we're deploying at Acuitive, the lessons learned, all those sorts of things. You're going to hear people are going to hear commentary. We're going to have guests that we're going to interview
yep,
to talk about things. I'm sure there's going to be on more than one occasion somebody in the industry or whether it's Broadcom buying VMware and charging exorbitant increases, and how a question I would pose to you, how the hell do you with a straight face CRO back that play? So things like that
yeah,
that we're going to talk about. Some of it's going to be provocative. Some of it's going to be everybody's going to shake their head and go, well, no kidding. That's an obvious thing.
sure.
But we really want to try and talk about this because we do have, even though we have shared experiences, we do have a different background or
Yeah,
different perspective on things. And I think that can make it very exciting. So that's what people can learn and expect from what we're going to bring to the table. Some zingers here and there, since you've already commented about, I have a face for radio. But really, it's lighthearted. It's not going to be a dry
that's
kind
right.
of just sit and talk about, hey, at Acuitive, we're awesome, even though we are.
Right.
But it's really going to be something that we have experiences that we both share and have different versions of. And that's what the podcast's all about. That's why it's, the sales hustle and ops muscle is we come at it from different ways, but we're getting to the same end at the end of the day.
You know what? I think you just summarized it perfectly. I would say, I would ask some of our listeners, I'm today challenged with looking at some of the advancements in AI,
Mhm.
specifically on the sales side. I can't wait to talk to you a little bit more about things like AI agents. I'm sitting here creating a digital sales team and a digital channel that has me thinking about, if I have products in my basket of offerings to customers, can I completely automate that effort? And it got me thinking, you just mentioned being provocative, right? I'll put this out there for all of our listeners. In 5 years, is it feasible that 75% of all of the salespeople out there selling products today could be unemployed? Now, notice I'm not talking about services here because I know that's a sophisticated sale. But follow me for a moment. If I'm selling products and I develop an AI agent that with natural language skills that, with the advancement in video and avatars nowadays, this person could literally be on a video chat with a client, or this AI agent could be on a video chat with a client, never miss a follow-up, use 100% of the intelligence that's out there, and probably leverage dozens, if not hundreds of data sources to actually know the sentiment of my customer, including their history and how they like to buy. I mean, it's almost mind-bending when I start thinking about, has anybody really done this successfully today? And I'm getting all of the marketing messages, right? You can imagine Salesforce, you've got IBM, you've got all of the major developer platforms out there, whether it's Zoom Info, LinkedIn Sales Navigator, they're all driving this AI, Chad. And I'm curious,
Mm.
have you seen anything like that? Has anybody tried to sell you in that way yet?
Yeah, it's interesting. Um, so I have, there's not, I wouldn't say with an avatar. I think you're right. I think that's still probably a few years off, but I can definitely see it coming to fruition. I've had what I'd call AI sales pitches, where as I'm reading the email, it's very clearly been generated by some sort of AI engine, whatever that may
Sure.
be. And what's interesting is I think just like anything that starts off the first time, there's a disruption, right? And there's natural resistance to it, whether it's by sales leaders who know there's no way a salesperson can, be replaced, right? Whether it's by me, a buyer,
That's right.
whether it's my current role or when I was, CTO or whatever the case may be. And I'll be honest, I'll express some bias. Some whether it's generational, even though I've been in the technology sector.
Like to be sold to in person, right?
Right. I want somebody to sit across the desk from me, shake my hand,
100%.
look in the eyes before I agree to sign. But people said the same thing. And, I was at SuperValue where we were in the grocery industry. And I remember when Instacart and Shipt and some of the other early forays into the meal delivery or the grocery delivery, there was a resistance because how are they going to pick my fruit? I like a very specific feel of the avocado or the meat. I want a 1.25 inch cut, not an
Sure.
inch. But you know what? Things happen, right? We had a pandemic that forced a lot of that to be adopted. But I think it would have been adopted anyway, because if you looked at the early adopters there, it was generational. It was people who were used to being able to interact with things over a phone. And I think you'll have the same thing as the generations progress and in leadership roles, they're going to be more comfortable with buying from somebody who's an AI. And I think as the technology develops, that will become more able to be a free-flowing, comfortable conversation that will allow for that. But you know what? Is it now? No, because like I said, it's funny, I will get an email and I can pick what's been generated by AI.
Sure.
And I think there's three different classifications. I see those that are really badly scripted, from automated, blind emails that are clearly have no AI involvement.
Mhm.
And then there's the ones that are, okay, look, this has spent a little bit of time. It's crafted. It's a little more personal. It feels more flowing, like natural email. And then there's the individuals that are in person that you can tell it's been written by somebody. But I think that line is getting more and more blurred.
I'm thinking of it personally, and when I look at it, I'm almost seeing it as an AI agent assist
Mm,
to a business development representative somewhere, right? Like if I can use an AI agent to help automate one of my digital channels, one of my digital business development reps to be able to automate a campaign that they're going after
yeah.
150 or 200 targets, right? And start to, use all of that information from our third party partners like Zoom Info,
Yeah.
right? They're able to, they're able to, enhance that content, customize it for a particular customer. And I got to tell you, I mean, it's really exciting, the possibility, but it's also a little scary, right? I
Sure.
mean, and it gets into topics like security and being careful about using your data, how you use your data. I'm super conscious of that because I come, just for everybody on the podcast, I come from an enterprise architecture background before I ever really got very good in sales, as I
Right.
understood the sense of um, what I'll call, enterprise engineering inside of the enterprise. And as I put those concepts to work on the sales side, I'm just a little overwhelmed at the possibility. All those things that you kind of dream of being able to do, you could probably find a way to do it.
Right.
And it's probably more available now with AI than it ever has been. So definitely a topic for us to chat with. And you know,
Absolutely.
um, I can't wait. I'm looking forward to this series. I think I have a couple of people in mind. I hadn't even mentioned all of them to you. I did mention Rick. I think the world of him as an individual and as a leader. But I have a couple of folks that have given TED Talks that have said, hey, be awfully, I've asked them if they'd like to come, and I want to hear about that experience.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Preparing to do a TED Talk is no joke. I mean, all of us have probably been on main stages and done,
Yeah.
major sessions in front of 1,000 people, but sitting there on a TED Talk that may have an audience of millions, right?
Right.
These individuals have been in every possible room, in so many different roles that I want to hear more about the preparation. How do they get set? Because I learn a lot from that personally. So I look forward to this. I really can't wait.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think because of the diversity of our backgrounds, potential, we everybody else says, well, this podcast is about X. Well, our podcast is just kind of all over the place. I mean, you've
It
got
could
those
be.
experiences. I've got individuals from when I, worked in security that are from the FBI can talk about, which goes right along with the AI and data privacy, things that they
Yeah.
can talk about, people who've had their identity stolen and have spent the last 15 years trying to rebuild it, talk about different hacking, I mean, there's such a variety that you and I have to bring to the bear that you can't really pin something down for really the basis of, it's not like, oh, this is a true crime podcast or, this is a technology podcast. The reality is we're going to have such a diversity of topics and there's enough in the industry and in the news media to talk about and everything else that we're going to be all over the place. And sometimes it may seem a little bit out of kilter, but I think at the end of the day, that's one of the things that'll be exciting about it because tune in, you'll not know what's coming next.
You hear that, everybody? Make sure you tune in. Mr. Chad Mead, Mr. Sean Jensen, leading hustle and muscle, a little sales hustle and a little ops muscle for your listening pleasure. And I think with that, Chad, this has been kind of a perfect kind of kickoff
Intro.
for us. Any other thoughts you have before we wrap up?
I think what is it? All of those podcasts say at the end of their podcast, like, follow, and subscribe. Isn't that the
Like, follow, and subscribe. Make sure you hit that button and leave us a comment if there's a topic that you'd like to hear us talk about, something that's either of interest or something you kind of are curious about the market. I think both Chad and I would love to hear from you guys. So, guys and girls. So, thank you very much for sharing a little bit of your time with us today. We'll catch you on the other side.
That's great. Thanks, Sean, to you, and we look forward to doing this more often.
All right. Have a great day, everybody.